Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we are live. We are back. It is the Alouettes Flight Deck, the podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football. I'm Cliffy D. That's Tim Capper. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Our 10th broadcast season is now live, in color, ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you say? Let's get this party started. Tim, so good to see you again, my man. What's new? What's going on? Talk to us. What's good with you, man?
No, everybody knows it already. If you don't know already, obviously both of us are on on X, Twitter, Twix, whatever you want to call it. You can find me at Repack. That's REPPACT.
And of course, you can find me at Cliffy D. So, whoops. God,
I know.
You think after 10 years or 10 seasons, I'd be good at this pointing at stuff? We've only been doing video for like 2 years, so I guess maybe I could temper my expectations just a little bit. So
That's true. And first and foremost, secondly, obviously being the 10th, our 10th season premiere, is we want to welcome our brand new presenting sponsor of Royal Retros. The crew over there have been just a joy to deal with, meeting them for the very first time at Grey Cup this past year. But they will be, again, as I said, the presenting sponsor of the Alouettes Flight Deck podcast. You can, by the way, head over to Royal Retros, royalretros.com, and use the promo code Flightdeck at checkout, and you will save 15% off your order. And the cool thing is about Royal Retros, Cliff, is not only do you not need a time machine in order to get all the sweet, sweet throwback merch, they also have Football Canada merchandise, and they also have CFLPA merchandise now available on the site. So you can use that promo code when you head over to the site and get some new merch associated with Canadian football in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So, yeah, definitely go check out Royal Retros. Very excited. A new era here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, and they're behind us 100%. We're behind them 100%. Once again, in the words of the great Tom Brady, let's effing go.
That's right. As you can see, as I mentioned, it's the 10th anniversary. So, excuse me. Trust me, Cliff and I have been talking about this already on how to make sure that we say it. It's our 10th season here at the Alouettes Flight Deck podcast. We want to thank Sebastian Bélanger over at Garden Design for helping help create the look that we want for this 10th season. And as you can see above, and as you've seen on social media, he has done a great job and collaborating with us on what we wanted for our 10th season commemorative logo. I can tell you that it will be available because we've already been asked that it will be available over at flightdeckgear.ca. Just stay tuned. We'll let you know on socials when it will be available. But again, it was great to work with Sebastian because again, he helped with our main logo, and now he's helped with our 10th season logo. But again, great to partner with the guy, and he's out of Quebec City. What better way for the Alouettes Flight Deck is to partner with a guy here in Quebec?
Absolutely. We always talk about support local, and I mean, doesn't get more local than right here in La Belle Province. So, yeah, very excited. Like I said, this is a new era for the Montreal for the Montreal Alouettes, for the Alouettes Flight Deck, for everybody here. I mean, I'm excited. I mean, a lot's happened since the last time you and I got together and talk on this this particular forum. So, let's get everybody caught up on what's new, what's going on, what's happening with the Alouettes de Montréal.
I would have said if people were to have used a particular episode to kind of brush up on what we're going to talk about today when it came to specifically free agency, because it's been free agent frenzy for basically for 2 weeks now because of the tampering window or the illegal tampering window, and now with free agency going live this past Tuesday. I would have gone back and said, check our episode out from last year that we did from Vancouver, because that's when the free agents lists were actually announced or listed by the guys over at 3 Down and by the league. And it's very interesting going back and seeing our comments on who we thought was going to stick with this team and who wasn't. kind of some prizes that we're going to be talking about. But that would have been probably my primer, I would have said, for people to go back and check out with. Uh,
Hmm.
First and foremost, we had teased it up before then, even with our last episode of the year last year in December. Oh yeah, the schedule will be out in a couple of weeks. It'll be a birthday. It'll be a Christmas present. Yeah, no, no, that was that was
No.
not the case. And the funny thing was, is how many people just got up in arms about it not coming out. And I get it. I get it. I mean, since it had been out before Christmas for 7 consecutive seasons, um, and then it comes out when it did.
Yeah,
People wanted to find out what's happening and be able to make plans and yada yada yada.
of course.
So the schedule came out, needless to say, and there were some positives with the Alouettes schedules. There was some stuff that we were like, okay, and really some ish negatives, I guess we could say. I mean, everybody's seen the schedule already, so I don't want to go through it in too much detail. You can always go back and check our socials because we did our basically our superlatives were are over there over on X or over on Blue Sky. But yeah, from you, what do you take away? Did you take away from the schedule itself? Anything that stood out in particular to you, Cliff?
Definitely, I thought it was interesting. The Labor Day weekend matchups. You basically only have the Labor Day Classic between Saskatchewan and Winnipeg. You got the Battle of Ontario on actual Labor Day, and then you have the Battle of Alberta also on actual Labor Day. But that leaves 3 teams that are not going to be participating in the weekend at all, which is very interesting because there was always some sort of combination of Montreal, Ottawa, or BC playing, and then somebody would have a bye week. Uh,
Mm.
I know for years they tried to make Montreal versus BC. Back when there was only 8 teams in the Canadian Football League, they tried to make Montreal BC a rivalry of sorts because it's the westernmost team versus the easternmost team. I mean, and that didn't quite capture everybody's attention. Trying to make Montreal, when Ottawa came back into the league, they tried to make Montreal Ottawa the rivalry of sorts, like try to make a battle of the 417 highway. It's there, but it's not like you don't have that same, anger or uh, competitiveness that you have, like when you compare like Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, for example, or Toronto, Hamilton. It's just not that same. There's not that same buzz to it. There's not that same, and I know it takes time sometimes to develop a rivalry like that, but truthfully, there's no real rivalry when it comes to like Montreal, Ottawa in anything, whether it's hockey, football, just nightlife. I mean, anything to do with those 2 cities. I mean, there's not. They almost seem to complement each other in a little way. Like I kind of look at like Montreal, Ottawa. It's kind of like a big brother, little brother relationship, and yeah, listen, if you've ever had like siblings, then okay, maybe they get on your nerves or they pick on you and things like that. But you wouldn't call it a rivalry per se, and that's something that's been kind of lacking with like all 3 of those teams that I mentioned. Is that yeah, there's just no there's no passion, there's no fire, there's no nothing that says okay, when these two teams get together on Labor Day, watch out, like you would with the other 3 matches. So I guess it's kind of interesting that this year they just said, okay, well, guess what? We're just not going to have any of those guys play. We're just going to have the 3 matches that arguably those are the ones that people really pay attention to. Those are the matches that people really get excited for. Like people even make trips out. Like even if you're not a Bomber fan or a Rider fan, there are a lot of people that still want to go out to Regina and see the Labor Day Classic just to be a part of that atmosphere because from everything I've been told, is electric. It is a real rivalry. It is true Canadian football in the prairies, and it's exciting as heck. And I get it. So maybe the thought is, okay, let's not involve these other teams. Let's just focus on those true rivalry games and really make them something special.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, it's I remember the whole trying to make BC Montreal a thing, and it really isn't a thing. And then I think for the 2nd year in a row, the Owls won't be playing on Labor Day, which I'm fine with.
Yeah.
One of the things that really stood out to me is just how the schedule was done. And I'm trying to remember if this has ever happened before. Obviously, with the shifting that the schedule has done over the years, is that the home finale clip is going to be the Thanksgiving Day Classic game. And I
Mm.
was like, "Really? It's not something that I don't think us or Owls fans are used to having. Basically, again, Thanksgiving is our home finale because it's such a giant party. That's a good way to end the season. A giant party, but yet there's our home finale. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know.
so
I don't know how to think about that, but I mean, to me, it was like, okay, it's different. The Owls will be able to, as an organization, be able to push not only Fan Appreciation Day, which I'm guessing they're going to do because they haven't put out
mhm,
their game day
their theme
themes
days.
yet. Yeah. And it will be as obviously the Thanksgiving Day Classic. So
Yeah.
I guess it was a little weird to see that, but I mean, I'm okay with it. One thing I love too, which very doesn't happen at all, rarely, is that the Owls open the season at home.
Mhm.
Week one, they're at home.
And interestingly enough, against the I hate to say it, the current Grey Cup champions. Uh,
What? You're not going to put it as much as like you did last year. I'm glad you had. I like how you sort of tempered it down.
and listen, hey, congratulations to the Argos for winning the Grey Cup. That's that's fantastic. And I mean, if current history has taught us nothing,
Mhm.
like in 2022, the Argos won the Grey Cup. In 2023, the Alouettes won the Grey Cup. 2024, the Argos win the Grey Cup. Maybe 2025, the Alouettes win the Grey Cup as a result of all this. Who knows? But yeah, so yeah, it's. But once again, for the second year in a row, the Grey Cup champions are on the road, and to me, that's
Mhm.
bizarre. And it's not a Grey Cup rematch either, like it has been over the past couple of years. It's much again. It's the Eastern Final rematch. I mean, okay, I don't know. I just don't get why the CFL doesn't seem to prioritize that as much as say like the NFL does. Now, it's not necessarily a Super Bowl rematch that happens the first game of the NFL season, but it is the Super Bowl champions at home that get to unfurl their championship banner and celebrate the Super Bowl win as the winning team takes on somebody. But it's still a home. That's their home opener right there. Whereas the past couple of years, at least like this coming year and last year, the Grey Cup champions were on the road, and it's just bizarre. I just I don't understand how. I realize how tough it is to put together the schedule. Clearly, it must have been very tough because it was took so long for it to come out. But I just don't understand why, if for no other reason, just to have some sort of continuity, do the Grey Cup rematch the first game, but have the champions at home starting the defense of their championship. It's I just don't get it.
Things too that I noticed there are a lot. The Owls have, I mean, a grand total of it's a couple of Saturday games, which I'm really happy about.
Mhm.
The CFL sort of tempered and cut back on those Sunday night games that they were promoting so much last year. We
Yep.
have not heard yet about the CFL and CTV yet, but the way that the current schedules are for Saturdays across the league, it's going to have to be a thing. I would not be surprised if it is again going to be a thing in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, viewership was pretty good for the most part. So, I mean, I think people are you gotten people conditioned to the whole idea of at least for the start of the season, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and now all of a sudden it's just back down to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which is different. And then once again, the as you said, after Labor Day, essentially, more than likely that's when the CFL on CTV is going to return. As you can see, there are quite a few games that are scheduled Saturday at 3 p.m., which is the time slot that CTV has decided that they want to broadcast CFL games from. So, I mean, trying to make sense of this CFL schedule at times is a daunting task, if you will. So, I mean, you just sort of accept it for what it is. And, listen, it's not a terrible schedule this year. I mean, I find it's, for the most part, fairly balanced. The one thing I am happy about, though, is yes, the Alouettes do have to go to BC on a Saturday and then play again on, I believe it's a Thursday night. But at least the Thursday game, like it's a short week, but at least the game is at home. It's this nonsense last year of playing on Thanksgiving Monday, then flying out to Vancouver and playing on Saturday is absolutely ridiculous. At least I feel it's a little bit. It's still not great. It's still not like a complete week, which would be much better to adjust from the time zone changes and all that stuff. But it, I feel at least that they must have heard our concerns about that, and I'm sure other fans' concerns about that as well. I guess this is kind of a compromise, or maybe this is the best possible scenario in order to let the Alouettes go to Vancouver and play the BC Lions, and then come back and still play the next week. But I mean, I'm hoping one of these days it lands, the stars align perfectly, so that if you have to go out and play in BC, then you get a bye week the next week to really allow the players to rest, recuperate, get back on their time zone, all that stuff. Like it's one of those things that hopefully in time the league will pay a little bit better attention to that and truly try to make something like that happen.
No, I agree, but again, it's yeah, this year's quick turnaround is completely opposite, as you said, from last year. It's not Montreal to BC, it's BC to Montreal, but then we got I think Winnipeg the following week, but still.
Yeah.
Um, again, the league has done a very good job this year to cutting down the games that they're having that are going to be at less at 5 games and 5 days and less. Let's just put it that way. But that's that's they did a very good job. I mean, if that's what took them so long to get the schedule to come out, hey, I'm all for it, right? I mean, I'm really okay with it. So I really can't complain. But there are some games that I'm really looking forward to. There really are. It's really tough too. I mean, Owls are at home for week 1 and then go on the road for 3 straight. Second year in a row that they've done that, have a 3-game road trip, but still, one's to Ottawa. That's like it's like a mini semi home game right now currently, with considering how, how the Alouettes own the Red Blacks in Ottawa, so.
Yeah, and how Alouettes Nation's willing to travel to the nation's capital. I mean, it's not that far, so I mean, and again, if the Alouettes are going to be doing what as they normally do and organizing a fan bus or train or something like that to go down and help support the team as they take on the Ottawa Red Blacks, I mean, yeah, in a lot of ways, it kind of feels like TD Place is almost like a second home, if you will, for the Montreal Alouettes, which is nice, I have to admit.
Yep, and obviously, I know we've seen who's currently on the preseason roster. There are a lot of former Alouettes again there this year that we're really going to love to see. So, but that we'll talk about that obviously a little bit more in when we talk about free agency and stuff like that. Some of the names that really stood out to who went where. But anything else? Anything else during the off season that really stood out to you, Cliff? Because I know you're talking about the schedule, and they seems like the organization made their point to the CFL about not the weird turnarounds and stuff like that for 4 or 5 day turnarounds. Anything else that really stood out to you that may have happened during the time that we were taking the short break?
Not particularly. I think we touched on the main points. I mean, as I said, you're never going to get the perfect schedule. I don't care which team you are. I don't, no matter what, someone's going to complain. It's never going to be good enough for any number of fans for any number of reasons. I mean, it's even, even if you promise like all weekend games, people will still find a reason to complain about it. It is what it is. I mean, I think for the most part, the schedule that's out now for 2025 is good. It's not perfect. It's not great, but I mean, it's workable. I think at the end of the day, I think that's what counts, is you got to make things as workable as possible. And, as they say, if you build it, they will come. If you put the game on, people will go, or they'll watch on TV. And as long as you're participating, as long as you're tuning in and checking out the Alouettes and watching, see what they can do, whether it's at Percival Molson Stadium or they're on the road and you're watching the games on TV, however it is that you're consuming this team, I think that's what counts more than anything else. And I looked at the schedule and I'm pleased for the most part. And I'm just excited. I'm just excited to get things underway. And it's funny, like right now in Montreal, the snow is coming down like crazy. It is a blizzard conditions, but already I'm just thinking, wow, it's only gonna be May in a couple of months, and I'm just excited to get this season going, because I'm curious to see how this Alouettes team is going to rebound from what happened last year, coming up just a little bit short of going back to the Grey Cup and defending their Grey Cup championship. How this team is rebuilding itself, retooling itself in the offseason, and what moves are going to be made in order to put the best possible team together. And it all started essentially as soon as they handed up the Grey Cup. I mean, the Alouettes got cracking right away with that tinkering of the roster and making the moves and making the important decisions. And I say let's jump into that and let's start breaking things down.
And one quick thing before we do that, Cliff, I still got to say it, as they've done every year. At least the Alouettes brought back the Thursday games.
I was gonna say said no one ever, but you just said it. So
Said no one ever. I hate
now,
Thursday
now,
games.
now we're gonna have to say said Tim Capper, but with
Well,
tongue firmly
and again,
planted in cheek.
yeah, again, if we know the reason why, after speaking with the organization last year, we know the reason why for the Thursday games. We get it. But it seems this year they may have been able to bypass a lot of the potential things that are happening in Montreal in early June by being on a 3-game road trip. So
Mhm.
we'll see. We'll see. So, but yes, a lot of things other than that did occur, man, and I don't want to know how we want to start or preface this because when it comes to free agency, and again, if you had gone back and watched our show right as we were at Grey Cup in Vancouver, over at Flightdeck HQ, you would have seen how we went over the list of who the current players were going to be that were going to be free agents. And like last year, Cliff, the Alouettes did their due diligence and did sign quite a few guys who were supposed to be pending free agents to single and multi-year contracts, and they did not have to worry about going that far and worrying about this the illegal tampering period and going into free agency.
Yeah.
There was a twist though, and I'm starting this off on purpose on this. There was a twist as the tampering window came to a close. There was an announcement by the CFLPA that there was going to be an increase in the salary cap for 2025. It was going to be increased by approximately $400,000. And now heading into 2025, Cliff, the salary cap in the CFL is going to be worth just shy of $6.1 million per team. And, we were told that the reason for the late time was the late announcement was because the CFLPA was trying to determine whether it was going to go towards bonuses, playoff increase in, I think, an increase in playoff pay, directly all into we found out it went directly into the salary cap.
Mhm.
So before we talk about free agency, Cliff, I wanted to ask you, what did this $400,000, in your opinion, league wide? Obviously we've been told it was a surprise by many, many teams and many GMs. But how much of a surprise was this to you? And do you think personally that this made a difference in who the Alouettes kept or let go to free agency?
A lot depends on how soon did the teams know that they would have had this extra 400,000 in the kitty, so to speak, because a lot of people are looking at the free agents that decided to leave during the tamper or agree to terms, I should say, with other teams, and they're asking, well, is it because they don't have enough money to keep certain players? Is that the reason why they're going elsewhere? I mean, that could have possibly been a factor, but it's also very possible too that the organization had decided that player X, for whatever reason, we got a certain amount in mind for him, and if it goes past that, if he gets a better offer beyond that offer, then he's got to take it. And that was the case with at least one player that we spoke with that wanted to stay in Montreal, but they made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and Montreal basically said, you got to take this. You got to take this for yourself, and we wish you all the best, kind of thing. And it's tough because obviously you've got your fan favorites, you got players that you absolutely enjoy watching perform on the field for the Alouettes, and to not see them be a part of this team anymore is going to be tough. There's no question about that. Could those players have stuck around if all of a sudden there's this influx of extra cash towards the salary cap? Maybe, maybe not. But I mean, the only people that can truly answer that is the CFLPA, who are the ones who made the announcement about the increase in the salary cap, and the organizations themselves, because they may have already, by the time the tampering window had come through, they may have already made the decisions about who was going to stay and who's go. And I think if a certain player hadn't been signed before that tampering period started, you kind of got the impression, okay, maybe the teams decided to move on from this player for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And they would have made their decisions. And of course, we would have freed up that opportunity to go after other players in the tampering period. Whereas Montreal this year, it seemed like a lot of their free agents, they decided who they wanted on this team, who they felt needed to be remaining as a member of the Alouettes, and they got them signed, sealed, and delivered well before, and they didn't even get a chance to go to market. That's how badly they wanted these players here. Whereas other players, they felt comfortable letting go to market. So I mean, I guess it's kind of tough. I wish we knew for certain when the teams were made aware of this, because maybe it could have made a difference, maybe not. But I can't help but feel that they'd already made their minds up on certain players, and they, again, if they wanted them bad enough, they would have gone after them well before the tampering period started. Whereas you don't want to wait until during that time. That by the time they've already agreed to terms with another team, oh no, wait, now we've got this money, now we want you. Like yeah, because that would be tough too. Because then like, even though agreed to terms is not legally binding and official, it's not official until you sign on the dotted line, which you couldn't have done until this past Tuesday. But could a player have maybe decided, okay, I really do want to stay with Montreal. If they could offer me that much more, then I'll take it. And if that was an opportunity, again, it's all speculative at this point. Unfortunately, we just don't know exactly to what extent that this influx of cash would have made the difference or not, or if the team had pretty much decided, no, we want players A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. If we keep them, great. If not, well, best of luck to you.
Again, I think I kind of agree with you that they did want the core nucleus of the guys that they wanted to play around Davis Alexander were signed well before the new year. And obviously them signing Austin Mack to that very rare contract that players ever, that player signed for Montreal. It's, they had him in already locked up also. It's a question, because I know that we usually try to do this during the preseason before the draft comes up and stuff like that. And I'm curious. It's a question that I actually want to pose to Alouettes general manager Danny Machocha about that in particular when it comes to the money. Did it make a difference? Did it make him second? Yeah. Were there any second thoughts to anybody who he wished he could have offered more money to maybe that they would stay or something like that? But yet. Again, I know you're talking about with that one player that we were talking about. The Alouettes, from what we were told, Alouettes said, "Go ahead and take it." And I don't know if it was more or less than what the Alouettes were offering. Maybe it was a 2-year contract versus a 1 or versus a 3-year contract, as an example. We don't know. This is some of the information that we're just not privy to yet. But I mean, it's you hear about the extra $400,000, and I'm curious to what the people are thinking about tonight who are watching us live. Please, by all means, chime in and leave us a comment. We'll put you guys the comments here, and we'll read them too, and we'll read them here on the show. One thing that kind of questioned, considering maybe it was just the timing itself, and it's a question too that I want to ask Danny, is the signing of Sean Oakman, and that came out of nowhere. In my opinion, that completely came out of nowhere. And was it the case of now that the Alouettes had the extra $400,000? Because sure enough, as we know, Oakman is a name in the CFL, has a great pedigree in the CFL. He is I'm going to look so short. I mean, he's 6'8". He's a foot taller than me.
He's a big boy.
Man. All you're going to see in the pictures of us is going to be my head and the rest of him.
We might have to put you on his shoulders. That's
yeah. It's just a matter of, I'm curious to know, was that already in the works prior to that extra $400,000 being made available? Because it just, come on, you got to admit, Cliff. Did you see that one coming? Nobody saw that one coming, because supposedly, I think Sean was supposedly going to be, I was trying to find out where it was, but it was looking at doing something in indoor football. I couldn't find out where, but
I believe that was last season, actually.
Okay. Did you find it that surprising? Because to me, it was like, where'd that come from? Because I thought the Owls were done. Honestly, I thought the Alouettes were done in signing free agents because we'd done what we needed to do. And then all of a sudden, Alouettes signed Sean Oakman.
Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of people were like, you saw like a lot of the deals that were being agreed to during the tampering period. And the Alouettes were just kind of, I don't want to say sitting on their hands, because as we discussed, a lot of that core nucleus that they signed just before the tampering period started in a way, that was kind of their action was doing that. Like, I mean, they didn't have to wait till the 11th hour to try and see what else was out there. Like they clearly they feel very good about those players enough to the point that they wanted them back. They wanted to make sure they were signed, sealed, and delivered, and never let them get a chance to go to free agency. But ultimately, it's kind of weird when you see like so many teams were just so busy with agreeing to terms with players, and ultimately Montreal only agreed to terms with 2 players, and you're kind of sitting there like, okay, well, I mean, obviously this team clearly has the confidence in the players that they signed beforehand, but when you see all these other teams, making all these crazy moves, and is it out of desperation? Is it just out of wanting a complete culture change within their organization? Is it just a matter of, he who has the most toys wins kind of thing? It's hard to say, but I mean, the fact that
As I've said before too, by the way, and it's just happened in years past where I think Hamilton was one of the big quote unquote winners. I think it was either last year or the year prior. These are just teams on paper. These are just teams on paper. We got to see what they do in camp, and then the guys that actually make the team go from there. I mean, again, it's like what they say: you can spend as much as you want in free agency, but this is the cap. This is currently what they're going to be worth with the cap. The cap doesn't start until week 1.
Yeah, and also too means that, I mean, if, for example, I'll give the example of the Edmonton Elks. Like the first day of the tampering period, I think they agreed to terms with something like 7 players. Like, wow, okay. That you talk about a culture change. I mean, and let's, I don't want to be disparaging, but let's call a spade a spade. The Elks have not been very good for quite some time now, and even when they've made certain splashy moves, I'm not saying they didn't pan out, but it clearly wasn't the winning formula, because ultimately they still did not make the playoffs and are desperate to get back to being a playoff football team. So once again, with ownership, relatively new ownership, a new GM, new president, new head coach, a new philosophy, even in Edmonton, changes were going to be made, big changes, and that's exactly what they did. Whereas with Montreal, one can make the argument they've never been more stable over the past couple of years. You know who the owner is. You know the president, the GM, head coach. The philosophy that's in Montreal has been in place now for quite some time. And if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. And let's be honest, you're looking at a team that won a Grey Cup 2 years ago, came this close to going back to the Grey Cup last season. One can make the argument you don't need to make all these crazy splashy changes. Like, you've got a great nucleus in your locker room already. It's just simply a matter of make sure they stay put. Make sure the players that you think can take you back to the promised land are under contract. And that's exactly what the Montreal Alouettes has done during the offseason, which, again, I give them full marks for being able to do that. So, no, they didn't have to make those splashy moves. But at the same time, I think a lot of fans were just kind of like, okay, well, you got to do something. Like, you got to make some sort of an impact. Like, don't people want to come play for Montreal? Don't you want to be a part of this organization? And it could just be a simple matter of like, well, listen, if they want to come on board, this is what we can pay them. I mean, if they're chasing a paycheck, then you go elsewhere. If you're chasing a ring and you're willing to take a bit of a pay cut in order to do so, then we'll talk. But I guess, hopefully we're going to have Danny Matosha on in the next few weeks to go over some of these moves or lack thereof. And maybe he can give us a little more insight as to, whether we're correct in our assessment of this thought process, or if there's another plan in place for this football team in 2025. I mean, no matter what, so far it's been very interesting. It's been a very interesting offseason. A lot of moves have been made, and I'm just curious to see how this all plays out on the football field. As you said, a lot of these moves look great on paper, but the games aren't played on paper.
No, they're not. By the way, you're talking about there was only 4. I think 2 players. Didn't the Alouettes sign 4 players in free agency?
Well,
could be wrong, but I thought it was 4.
Well, I'm talking about agreed to terms, like during the tampering period.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Fair. I will give you that. I will give you that. It's funny. Week 1, and all of a sudden, what the hell happened to my camera? We'll deal with it. Yeah, we'll deal with it. Also, just flip like that. I think before we start doing that, and we talk about free agency and stuff like that, Cliff. Um, since you love doing the during the opening this week, and I loved you doing the opening this week, let's go ahead and at least let everybody know where we are and the things that where they can find us over on social media. Take it away, buddy.
My goodness, we definitely are all over social media and the World Wide Web. If you haven't already, make sure you go check out our website over at www.alouettesflightdeck.ca. You'll find our archive there of, well, as I said, now this is our 10th broadcast season, folks. So if you want to check out the other 9 seasons, see how we got from this point here, or how we got to here from all the way back to the beginning, you could do so at www.alouettesflightdeck.ca. Of course, social media, we're all over that. You can find us on X and Blue Sky at Alouettes FL Deck. Check out our Facebook page over at Alouettes Flight Deck Pod. You can find us on Instagram and on YouTube, both at Alouettes Flight Deck. If you're following the show on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. Make sure you leave the comments, of course, because we appreciate everybody's input on this. Make sure you're following too on social media as well, and hit that notification bell to make sure you get notified when we do go live, whether it's a show like this. Not every podcast is going to be live, unfortunately, but when we do go live, we want you to be a part of that as well. So make sure you're doing that. My goodness, let's not forget Flight Deck Live will be re-debuting this year, but that's going to be closer to when the season gets underway. So make sure you have a chance to check that out as well. And you can catch up on previous episodes of the Flight Deck Live over on our Twitch account, which is twitch.tv/Alouettes Flight Deck, I believe. If you're looking for some sweet swag, and as we talked, that 10th anniversary logo will be featured on a t-shirt and other great merchandise as well. Make sure you head on over to www.flightdeckgear.com and buy up all the merch, folks. We got t-shirts, we got pillows, we got glassware. You name it, we've got it. So I'm so excited to be able to get this 10th season underway, and make sure you're following along with us, folks. At the end of the day, make sure you follow along, and of course, nothing but love for our presenting sponsor, Royal Retros. As we've talked about, it's going to be a new era here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, a new era for the Montreal Alouettes, and we're so excited that Royal Retros is going to be a part of that. And let me tell you, they got not just CFL retro merchandise. We're talking everything's there, and not just you talk about not just retro NFL. You're talking retro CFL, NFL, AFL, the World League of American Football, for crying out loud. If you want a Montreal Machine jersey, yeah, they got that. So make sure www.royalretros.com, use code FlightDeck, save 15%, folks. You gotta love it.
Yeah, and by the way, it's Canadian football or throwback Canadian football merch.
You're right, because there's also
Yep.
CFL USA teams.
No, yeah. So,
I stand corrected.
as I said, as we were talking about before about the potential change, and we kind of, there really was, Sean Open was one of the last names, really, along with Regis Sibasu, who was officially announced after that, because they had him on the Alouettes had a free agency frenzy stream the other day. Had a few of the new guys on. Um, I think what we need to do, Cliff, is let's let everybody know who hasn't seen or heard the full list. I mean, and it is tough. A lot of these guys, I think that you and I had, were on our list of most likely that they were going to stay. You and I had our ideas of that list that came out um, at Grey Cup of who were free agents, of who we thought the Alouettes were going to keep, and who we thought for sure were going to keep. Some of these guys that we considered to be that top echelon of for sure didn't stay. We were pretty spot on though on quite a few of them. And I think one of the ones that we thought that was going to be a for sure, which wasn't, was Reggie Stubblefield. Lost him to the Hamilton Tiger Cats on a 3-year contract, reported at $500,000, but it can't confirm that. What's your thought on Reg? Because we love the dude. We'll welcome him back. We will go say hey to him when he comes back here when Hamilton comes to town.
Mhm.
the Alouettes, we know, I think, did want to bring him back. But he's been a year out of football.
Yes.
Now, maybe it would have been in something slightly different if he had gone out halfway through the season and, and Crosby had to come in and do what he did then. But
Mhm.
he went out week 1. Crosby was able to step in. The Owls still had one of the best defenses in the CFL last year in 2024. The question is, why? Reg is was basically signed on a 3-year contract for 1 year. His 2023 rookie year and 1
Mhm.
game.
Yeah,
Surprising to say the least.
without question. And listen, I want to make something very clear. I am thrilled for Reggie. I mean, you talk about we talk about he is such a good dude. I mean, as great a football player as he has shown, even in a limited capacity, as good as he's been on the field, he's 10 times better off the field. I'm just an absolute prince of a guy. So I am personally, on a personal level, extremely happy for him. Like I always say, go get that money, secure the bag, as they say. Like if you get a chance to go and get that money, get that payday, I'm all for it. Especially since Reggie does have a Grey Cup ring. So as I said, some people are chasing a ring, some people are chasing a paycheck. Reggie's got the ring, so now I'm sure in his mind he's like, listen, I've got this, and no one's ever going to be able to take this away from me. Now I got to get paid, and listen, he's getting paid, and kudos to him for it. I mean, I think the Alouettes would have brought him back in the same vein that they brought back Reggie White Jr. despite coming back off of an ACL injury, and that's exactly what happened to Reggie. Was he tore his ACL week 1 versus the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I think they would have brought back Stubblefield if they could have gotten him. I don't want to say on the cheap. It's not so much about on the cheap. I think they wanted a little more of a team-friendly deal, just in case. Just in case, for whatever reason, the rehab didn't go quite as successfully as they had hoped. And if you look at Reggie's Instagram and his social media, he's posting videos on there, and the dude he's jacked. He's looking good. I mean, he's looking like he's ready to go. So I mean. But at the same time, you only talk about your victories, not necessarily your setbacks, your losses, or anything like that. And
Yeah,
for all we know, he might have those, or things may be going swimmingly. And I have a feeling that Hamilton is gambling that Reggie is going to be top tier. He's going to be recovered 100%, ready to go for training camp in May. And they wanted him on board, and they were willing to pay for him to come over to Hamilton. And again, as tough as it is for Alouettes fans to lose someone of that caliber, because as we said, just an absolute prince of a gentleman, heck of a football player too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he played some absolutely outstanding football, and that he was able to parlay that year and 1 game into a 3-year contract worth $500,000. Man, good on you, Reggie. I mean, I'm happy for you. I really am. It sucks that he's not going to be an Alouette, but he did what he had to do, and he got paid, and yeah, can't be mad about that.
no. And by the way, one of the few things that I wish we had done, because I knew we had him on the pod during his original season, and I think we had a Grey Cup interview with him too, if I remember correctly.
We sure
Um,
did.
I happened to watch his presser with him with the Tiger Cats introducing him. How did we not know that his great grandfather was the one that made Stubbs barbecue sauce? You would think that he would have dropped that nugget, or at least somebody in the Montreal media would have picked that up. Come on, man! I want to hear that. I wanted to hear. Now, knowing that, I wanted to hear the story.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. When people are like, "Well, why do you think Reggie signed with Hamilton?" And my first thought was, I remember that Grey Cup interview that I did with him. He talked about he was this close to joining the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but he went back to Montreal and said, "Listen, I got a chance to go to Winnipeg. I really want to be here. Can you make it happen?" And they did. Now, who was the assistant general manager at the time for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? That would be one Ted Gavea, who
Yeah.
what's his job? What's his job right now? Oh yeah, he's the current general manager of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So I'm pretty sure Ted looked at Reggie and said, "You know what? I didn't get you the last time, but I'm getting you this time." And clearly, he was prepared. He saw the value in Reggie Stubblefield back in 2023. Couldn't get the job done then, but 2025, he said, I'm not going to miss. I'm getting this guy by hook or by crook. And sure enough, Reggie Stubblefield, unfortunately, is now a Hamilton Tiger Cat. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I would have liked to have known about his was his grandfather or great grandfather, the
Great
inventor of.
grandfather. Great grandfather.
That's
And I've
amazing.
seen it. I've seen it. I've seen it here in Canada. I've seen Stubbs barbecue sauce here in Canada. So I was like, dude, come on.
Yeah, damn, Reggie, I thought we were cool. You holding out on us, bud. But
I think, by
like,
the way, just sort of a caveat. I think Stubbs, it was so big. I think it was bought by Kraft. If I remember
oh,
correctly, I think it was bought by Kraft.
okay.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear that's what I read. But um, look at the other people that we did lose this year. Obviously, we've already talked about the Cody Fajardo trade for McLeod Bethel Thompson.
Did we?
Um, or did we? I mean,
I think it happened just after because we talked about how ultimately the Alouettes made their decision when it came to like this supposed quarterback controversy, and they basically decided, no, Davis Alexander's the guy, and we'll figure it out with Cody. And we wondered, was there a possibility that he could find a way to keep Cody on board? Would he be okay being backup? And obviously, he wasn't. Or maybe the Alouettes didn't feel comfortable in the idea of him sort of waiting in the wings just in case Davis got hurt. So they made their decision. They were going with Davis Alexander as QB1, and they ultimately traded, as we sort of talked about right now, traded Cody Fajardo to the Edmonton Elks for McLeod Bethel Thompson. Now, let's not forget, I believe both men were under contract, Cody Fajardo still had one more year on his contract, and MBT was a pending free agent.
Right.
And I think the trade was sort of contingent on a deal being able to be reached with both gentlemen by their new respective clubs. Sure enough, for whatever reason, Cody Fajardo.
Cody's like a snap, and it was done. One day you look at the transaction wire, Cody Fajardo deleted from the roster, added to the roster. You knew right away there was something that his contract was renegotiated.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because, as we discussed, the end of season presser last year, Cody was very much of the belief that he could still play at a high level, and I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. He wanted to be a starting quarterback, and I felt maybe he still could, but where? And at that time, too, there was still a question mark whether Trey Ford was going to stick around in Edmonton because he, too, was a pending free agent, and with the new regime, we had no idea at that time if they believed in Trey Ford, or were they just going to let him test the free agency waters? But sure enough, he decided to, the Elks decided to say, yeah, Trey Ford's our guy, and we're going to stick with him. Signed him to I believe that he got a 3-year contract, if I'm not mistaken, and they made the trade for Cody Fajardo, and Cody Fajardo all of a sudden decided, yeah, I don't mind being a backup quarterback. So now he's going to back up. He's going to help mentor Trey Ford. He's going to help him, I guess, be the best version of him as possible. And now we have McLeod Bethel Thompson, journeyman quarterback, who's going to be backing up one Davis Alexander. And that, too, is going to be interesting, I think, in its own sort of way.
Yeah, and by the way, for those of you who are listening just to us on the audio version, which will be available later, it being the first show of the year, we've had so many issues when it comes to cameras and lights. Cliffy D has lost his ring light, so he's now shadowed Cliffy D. So
shadow of my former self, is that what you're saying?
The shadow of your former self, maybe. Yeah. But it's only show 1 of season 10, so it's good thing to know that we have a lot more to go to improve on this and to charge your ring light.
Actually, no, it kind of fell. So
I know. It's the whole Macbeth thing and Cody. I think so. Like with Reggie, Cliff, it's like we don't wish Cody any ill will. We love Cody Fajardo and what he did for this franchise. Well deserved getting his extension in 2023 after winning the Grey Cup and being the MVP.
Definitely.
And I don't blame Danny Mack and the organization for signing Davis Alexander to a multi-year contract and giving him the keys to the team. I don't blame him at all. Because, again, as we've talked about before, we've seen Davis from day one. and we know what this kid can do. And now it is going to be his time to shine. We saw what he did last year, went 4-0 last year for with an asterisk. 4-0, so it should have been 5. But it's nothing against, and I agree with you stating that I think having Cody being as the backup this year in Montreal would have been just a touch strange. I agree with you on that point. So Macbeth, sure he is a 500, is a career 500 winning percentage quarterback, but he does have some positives. He really does. And I think as long as if he has to come in, as long as the O-line stays as good as it has been, and it looks like it has improved this year, and who knows what Danny Mac's going to do when it comes to the we got quite a few picks in the draft, first round of the draft coming up. I think we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have any issues.
Yeah. I mean, let's not forget, MBT did win a Grey Cup, lead the Argos to the Grey Cup in 2022, and brought them to the promised land. So, I mean, the guy knows how to win, for sure. I don't think he's going to steal anything away from Davis Alexander. I think if, God forbid, Davis Alexander gets hurt, you can put MBT into the game, and he's not going to necessarily lose the game for you. It's good. It's kind of tough because I think Alouettes fans, they understood and appreciated what Cody Fajardo brought to the team. And I'm not saying that MBT can't bring something similar to the team. It's just going to be a different vibe. I mean, as we discussed, Davis Alexander is the man, full stop. He is the guy. He has proven it. He bided his time. He did everything right. He definitely has earned this opportunity. And I will still stand on business saying that he is going to be the quarterback of the future for the Montreal Alouettes without any question. Claude Bethel-Thompson, he's here now. Will he stay here? Will he be, the true backup for Davis Alexander? As it stands right now, yes, but a lot of things can happen. Like I'm looking, for example, at the draft. Jonathan Senecal, for example, of the Université de Montréal. He's been in training camp for the Alouettes before as in sort of an internship. It's his draft year. There's a possibility he comes in. Maybe the Alouettes pick him up and kind of do what they did with Davis. Bring him in, sit him on the bench, let him learn from the greats. Let him learn from like the Anthony Calvillos and McCall Bethel-Thompsons and so on. Like you really get that experience. And then when the time comes, he'll get the chance to show what he can do to shine and even complement a Davis Alexander, because as it stands right now, Davis Alexander is the man and will stay that way. There's no question in my mind that's going to happen. Could Jonathan Senecal be the future for the Montreal Alouettes? That is certainly a possibility. Is McLeod Bethel-Thompson going to be the future for the Alouettes? No, but he is definitely someone that I think can be a great contributor, someone who can definitely help mentor and guide these young quarterbacks like a Caleb Evans, if they draft him, Jonathan Senecal, and yes, even Davis Alexander, I think can stand to learn from someone who has the experience that MBT does. So it's going to make for a very interesting quarterback room. And I think one that's going to truly complement this team offensively. And I mean, like I said, I really am excited. I really am excited to see if this is going to work, because you and I think we were cautiously optimistic when Cody Fajardo came here. And let's not forget, a lot of people thought, okay, Cody's washed, he's finished. They ran him out of town on a rail out of Saskatchewan. What's he going to do in Montreal? I'm like, okay, let's wait and see. Maybe a change of pace is going to be, a change of scenery is going to do him good. And look what happened. And I'm getting kind of those same vibes a little bit when it comes to the Alouettes quarterback room, is that let's wait and see what happens, because it's going to be different. There's definitely some talent there. It's just a matter of, can they go out and execute? I do feel very confident that Davis Alexander can go out and execute. I feel confident that if called upon, MBT can come in and execute. If you need someone for short yardage, Caleb Evans will be able to do that. And if you're looking towards the future, as I said, I'm not guaranteeing that the Alouettes are going to pick Jonathan Senecal in the draft, but if they do, that is a burgeoning talent waiting to happen, and just put in the right environment and give them the chance to properly learn could be something really special for the Montreal Alouettes too. So this quarterback room, I think, has a lot of those same vibes that we had in 2023, and I'm just excited to see how it all plays out.
for sure. I mean, it's who knows again, who knows what's gonna come out of the draft because that could always be that could be an interesting prospect going forward. Um, we, lost and I'm just gonna read through these, Cliff, and I wanna know your thoughts on here. We lost Philip Gagnon, we lost Brock Gowanlock free agency, we lost KJG, Andrea Grant free agency, Nafis Lyon to free agency, Christian Matt retired.
Mhm,
We just mentioned Reggie Stubblefield, Reggie White Jr. We lost free agency, and Derek Wigan retired.
mhm.
Thoughts on those players that we lost? Now, I will be honest, since we are talking about it now, um, I did not see Reggie White Jr. returning to Montreal.
Mhm,
Despite what the Alouettes did for him and keeping him on the roster for the last couple of years, obviously the Alouettes receiving core has grown leaps and beyond from what it was just 2 years ago.
mhm.
Obviously, with the guys that we're going to be getting back, and who how and then the contracts that these guys have signed. We're going to be getting Tyson Philpott back,
Mhm.
and the rest of the core that we had. Keon Julian Grant for me, Cliff, I think was one that was kind of on the bubble. I knew that we were going to lose. I said I knew we were going to lose Reggie White. I didn't see him coming back.
Yeah.
AJG was on the bubble for me. But any of those other players or the ones I just mentioned, thoughts on where they went and what your thoughts were on, did you think that they were gonna stay or leave?
Uh, yeah, I had a feeling like you that Reggie White Jr. was unfortunately going to be the odd man out because, as you said, this receiver room is pretty stacked. I mean, especially when you talk about like Tyson Philpott coming back from his injury last year, and if he's back at 100%, definitely be excited because he was actually on a pretty good tear to start the season last year. I mean, one can make the argument had he stayed healthy, he probably would have been like the unanimous choice for most outstanding Canadian, at least for the Eastern Division. Instead, it was Eddie Berglund, also Montreal Alouette. So, but I digress. You look at Austin Mack, you look at Cole Speaker, Tyler Sneed. I mean, these are some bona fide dudes on this roster when it comes to the receiving core. Uh, Shedler Furvius is someone who I think is just waiting for that opportunity to be a breakout receiver and a national receiver at that. So, I mean, obviously, Tyson Philpott is number one in that category. But I think Shedler Furvius, now with the departure of Keon Julian Grant, I think he steps into that role. And I think we're about to see something really special with this young man. And it's unfortunate we had to lose KGG in the process for that to happen. But sometimes, like, as I say, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. So maybe that was the move that had to be made. And maybe that's how Danny Machocha feels, is that as a great a player as KGG is, we've got something really special here. And I don't want to say you can never have too many national receivers, but I kind of feel like in this case, I guess you can. So I guess I'm guessing that's where it's at right now. And listen, wishing all the best to all these players that have decided to move on. Christian Matt and Derek Wigan, I mean, well-deserved retirement. I mean, both these gentlemen were class acts, 100%. We only got Derek Wigan for 1 year, but my goodness, he played some outstanding football still. I mean,
Mm,
it's tough to lose people in the trenches, and I mean, losing veteran presence on the offensive and defensive lines is never great. But I mean, listen, sometimes, as they say, Father Time is undefeated. So now comes new opportunities for new people to step in and take over those roles. But realistically,
hold on, and one thing I wanted to mention too, by the way, is that where we're talking about players, and I don't remember if we had if we made this conversation public-ish last year and during last season, but we had a conversation with Danny Machocha, and where we were musing about a player that was within the league, and it was very interesting to see how we as and I'll say it, we're amateur GMs. We're amateur GMs. But how we as amateur GMs saw another player in the league, which we thought could be potentially a good fit for the Alouettes, and how the Owls organization saw this player.
mhm,
So it's very interesting to see that they may be one of your most favorite players in the world, but something with it, where whatever it may be, the organization may give this player a lower rating and say, you know what, he may not be worth as much, or he may not be able to fit and be an integral piece of the puzzle for the Alouettes roster going forward. And
Mhm.
I'll admit, I think to you especially, considering the answer that you got versus what you were thinking, it was eye-opening. And I think a lot Alouettes faithful and Alouettes nation need to understand that as much as we love these players, sometimes it is either money, contract, or how a player is not necessarily perceived, but how they are ranked within what is already on the roster.
Mhm.
They may not be back because of that particular thing. And it
Yeah.
really was an eye opener. And it's something that you and I learned quite a bit with, even with that short conversation. So
Yeah.
people may be pissed about some of these guys not coming back. But then again, us being amateur GMs and being media who follow the team, we were pretty spot on some of these guys not returning to the Alouettes in 2025.
Yeah. I think the only shocker to me personally was Philippe Gagnon. He was just one of those guys that I just kind of expected to be a lifer. I mean, Quebec-born player, so obviously he was going to get every opportunity possible with the Alouettes. I'd be curious to know what Saskatchewan offered him that made him decide to go all the way out there. I mean, listen, if they offered him a great payday, then hey, no one's going to get mad at him for as I say, securing the bag, as they say. But I have to admit that one kind of caught me by surprise. Like, wow, really? Like, okay, I never want to assume that a Quebec-born player, for example, wants to play for the Alouettes or will spend their entire career with the Alouettes. Sometimes they may start here. They got drafted here. I mean, let's not forget, Philip Gagnon was drafted by the Alouettes. He did leave. He did go to the Ottawa Redblacks for a little bit, came back to the Alouettes, helped them win a Grey Cup. In fact, I'll go so far as to say he was such an integral part of the offensive line that ultimately helped this Alouettes team win the Grey Cup. You just sort of assume that at that point, like, okay, well, maybe it's kind of like Reggie Stubblefield. He got the ring, and now it's time to get paid. And maybe that's really what it was. Maybe the Alouettes were like hoping that he'd take the hometown discount. And if someone else comes along and offers crazy money, and again, we don't know how much money Philip Gagnon was offered, but if he was made an offer he couldn't refuse, and the Alouettes weren't willing to match it, then he would have been crazy not to go out to Saskatchewan and try to ply his trade there. So I mean, that for me, I think was the biggest surprise, if only because, as I said, I kind of expected Philip to retire as an Alouette at this point, but sometimes life gets in the way of all your plans.
Yeah, for me, it was Stubbs. I think beyond that, I'll say Gagnon also. But again, as we had a feeling that again, we didn't let it be known. Reggie White was one of our guys that we thought wasn't going to come back. KGG we're on the fence with. But it's funny, we lose a Quebecer, but did we gain two new guys? Both guys, basically, one's coming home, so to speak. You know,
Well, both are.
and we
Both are.
and we had another guy who played his university ball and who is a Quebecer also, in the guys that we were able to sign and have to come here. And one of those being Josh Archibald, and the other
Mhm.
one is Cyril Hogan Sedon. The other two, by the way, as we mentioned, Trevor Mason, and then we mentioned Sean Oakman earlier. But we did gain two. I think Josh Archibald was a very big surprise. Um, but he's a guy who he's a university ball at the University of McGill. So he'll be
Mhm.
coming home, so to speak, and playing on his home field.
Yeah.
Um,
Also a
any
Quebec-born
thoughts?
player as well.
That's right. That's what I meant. Yeah. Any thoughts
Yeah.
on some of these guys coming back, or who we signed through a free agency?
Well, ultimately, as we talked about, Christian Matt and Derek Wigan both took their retirement, but one offensive line, one defensive line, and lo and behold, I guess you can call Cyril Hogan-Sando and Josh Archibald the replacements, so to speak, because both Canadian. It's funny. Two national players retire. The Alouettes signed two national players, one on defensive line, one defensive line. So I I don't know if they're necessarily be considered 100% replacements, but I guess kind of maybe that may have been the thought process of, okay, we lose these veterans, and it's time to replace them with some relatively young, talented, national players, which again is always a win no matter what. And Cyril Hogan-Sindon, I remember seeing him play for the Rouge et Or. Was very successful. I believe I can't remember if he won one or two Vanier Cups with Laval, but again, does bring that experience to the Alouettes. Josh Archibald is one of those players that kind of flew under the radar for me a little bit. Like, I mean, he's put together a very solid resume, and I'm really excited to see how he's going to line up along with the other guys on the defensive line. You're talking about like now with Sean Oakman, but like Mustafa Johnson, Lowell Ugalak.
Healthy Mustafa Johnson. That's what
Yeah.
thing people need to remember is a healthy Mustafa Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about for days just how Danny Machocha is always looking to improve the defensive line, and signing guys like Oakman and Archibald definitely help with that. Even a Trayvon Mason too, and I believe the Alouettes have also added on, like, they may just be camp bodies to us for now, but you never know when someone's going to all of a sudden stand up, and people have no choice but to take notice of who's that guy. Whoa, look at him go, and just watch this guy come literally out of nowhere and just play absolutely outstanding football. That is always a possibility too with the Alouettes. And in a lot of ways, they don't have to make the big splashy free agent moves. They just have to solidify the depth that's there. And how many times have people come out of the woodwork? Like, people, you didn't know them from a hole in the wall, and the next thing you know, they're superstars in this league. The Alouettes seem to have been able to do that now for the past couple of years, and that seems to be their formula. That seems to be the way that they like to approach things. And it's to the point now, like, you may not recognize some of these names that have been signed if you've been paying attention to the Alouettes transactions, but you never know when the next Austin Mack, the next Darnell Sankey, the next Reggie Stubblefield even is going to come out of the woodwork. So as disappointing as I'm sure a lot of people are, like, oh, well, we didn't sign Kenny Lawler, we didn't sign Justin McInnes, we didn't sign, any number of these like big superstar players. No,
wasn't going to happen. That wasn't going to happen based on the money that we have toward our guys so far. Now that, again, that 3-year contract to Mac or 4-year contract to Mac, whatever it is, and also Tyson, and Speaker, and I mean, it's yeah.
The point is, yes, the Alouettes have
Tyler Snead and stuff like that. I mean, it's like, and again, we got the drafting up. The Owls have signed some people already. It wasn't going to happen. It wasn't. If they weren't going to put the money towards Reggie, so now, mind you, we don't know what he was being offered by the Alouettes, but still, again, it's still a big surprise with Sean Oakman. Came out of nowhere.
And listen, I'm excited to see what this guy can do, especially lined up with those names that I just mentioned on the defensive line. Holy cow. I mean, that is going to be scary good. And if I'm a opposing quarterback, maybe I don't want to come to Montreal, play Montreal after all, because those guys are definitely going to make a lot of noise. Those guys are definitely going to make the quarterback's life a living hell. And I am here for it 100%. But all this to say that, yes, in a lot of ways, the Alouettes did make those flashy moves. They just weren't flashy during the tampering period. They weren't flashy on day one of free agency. It was a matter of kind of working, like lying in wait, or, working in silence kind of thing, however you want to phrase it. But they made those moves already, and they solidified the depth. They kept the core nucleus. They did everything they could to maintain who they feel will get this Alouettes team back into the Grey Cup game. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of winning free agency in and of itself, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I think so. Again, we won't be on the lists, 3 down lists of the teams that won free agency.
Well.
Again, every team is not the same every year. Every team is not the same every year. And the Owls have a chance this year, again, as I mentioned before, of what they can do in the draft, considering how many picks that they have. Again, we still have a little bit more of this offseason to go. See what the Alouettes are able to do. So right before camp does end, we still have the global draft too. The guys that currently are not signed yet is wide receiver Nate Bahar, linebacker Frederick Daniel, quarterback Dominic Davis, defensive line Avery Ellis, and defensive line Dylan Wynn.
Actually, Frederick Chanio did announce his retirement during the offseason.
There we go. Okay.
So yeah.
By the way, one name that should be listed on that list but isn't, Shawn Lemon. I don't think he is not a part of the team. As far as I know, his contract with the Alouettes is up.
It's up. If he were eligible, he would be technically a free agent, but
eligible minus 2 games.
So sorry, I got to bring this up because it was actually brought up to me.
I was hoping to.
Because it was brought up to me when I did my guest spot on the Canadian Football Countdown, which, by the way, shout out to those guys in their free agency frenzy show. Absolutely outstanding. Like, these guys bring it every single year, and I'm always humbled.
8 hours. 8 hours.
Yeah, man. And I'm humbled to be just a little part of it. So thank you again to those guys for having me on to talk about this. And yeah, one of the questions that came up was Shawn Lemon. The fact that he was handed a 2-game suspension for performance enhancing drugs. He tested positive for performance enhancing drugs. Except he's already suspended indefinitely by the league for gambling. So what's the I sincerely hope this was like a sort of an administrative thing, like, oh, we have to do this kind of thing. Like, to me, it's like insult to injury. Like, haven't you done enough already? Like, Randy Ambrosie's made it very clear that Shawn Lemon, as long as he's commissioner, Shawn Lemon will never be reinstated in this league. Okay, fine. I feel like we've made peace with that. We've accepted it. We're moving on. It is what it is. And unless he decides to do like the whole presidential pardon thing, like maybe one of his last acts as CFL commissioner will be to reinstate Shawn Lemon just for the chaos factor. Who knows? Or maybe that'll be one of the first acts of the new commissioner, whoever that may be. Again, only time will tell on that one. But
remember too, and we had heard some stuff over the off season, and there, I don't know necessarily would call this a conspiracy theory. I'm trying to remember who we heard it from one of our sources, and it was a very interesting points that were made. Again, where this is true or not, take it with a grain of salt, everybody, is that they wanted to get Shawn up to a full year. And then he would be reinstated. Whether that is true or not, I don't know. Maybe these extra 2 games get him up to that full year. I know.
So it's so silly. It really is. I mean, like again, if it's true that he is indefinitely suspended, and a lot of people say, well, he definitely should be suspended or banned or whatever. And okay, I get if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But I sincerely hope this was like an administrative thing or some sort of legal thing that had to be done. Like, oh, by the way, even though you know, as part of your contract ending or whatever, just in case, so for whatever reason you get reinstated, you still have to serve those 2 games. Like, I mean, if I'm Shawn Lemon, I'm like, oh, F you, man. Like, haven't you done enough? Like, hasn't he suffered enough? But yeah.
I really wanted to say when you started to bring up Shawn Lemon, I was going to bring up the infamous backup dancers for Kendrick Lamar and say, are you really going to say it? Yeah. It is what it is. Again, Shawn, as far as I know, I think he's still listed as being suspended on the Alouettes roster. I think.
Actually, I checked the transactions. He's not on the roster.
Okay, so he's been released. Okay, so he's not part of a team. So, again, it is what it is, and the CFL.
It is what it is, and it's goofy as heck. What can I say?
Yeah, I agree. Anything else we want to bring up before we go? I mean, just want to remind everybody, since we still are in our off-season mode, even this was the season premiere, 10th season premiere, We'll be back. It's every 2 weeks for the next couple of months leading up to the draft. But stay tuned to all of our socials, and don't forget to obviously with our new presenting sponsor Royal Retros. If you use the promo code Flightdeck at checkout, you will save 10% off your entire order, and that is over at royalretros.com. Anything else you want to talk about, Cliff, that that's been sitting in your head since we did our last show? Anything that's popped up, whether it be CFL related or whatnot, before we finish up this week?
Well, I'd like to kind of go into like our 10th broadcast season. Like we've come a long. I like to feel we've come a long way, and I'm hoping that throughout this particular season, we look back on some of these moments and we kind of look back, because I feel we've come a really long way, Tim. And from when I think back to those first couple of episodes we did, which are archived, unfortunately, and if you want to go back and listen to them, go ahead. But I mean, I find they were cringy as hell. But we're obviously we're trying to find our way, right? We're trying to establish the forum that we have now, and trying to develop the sort of the vision that we had for this podcast. Because when you and I started this, we didn't know how far we could take it. We didn't know what we were capable of, right? And I've always said I always want to take this podcast as far as I can go with it, and take it a little bit further. And I like to think that you and I have done that. I think we've accomplished some pretty incredible things with this podcast in 10 seasons. Would you say? I mean, we started this podcast, the Alouettes were not in a good place on the field or off. And look at them now. We've gotten to. Go ahead.
I was saying we've been lucky. Well, besides still interrupting each other, we are still. We just like the Owls did. We improved over the years. Even though I came into this thing, 10 years ago, having 20 years of experience doing podcasting, it's still a matter of, do you get along with your co-host, and how easily you're able to feed off each other. And I think the pluses for us is that, it started off where you were a guy who went to training camp most of the time by yourself, and we would feed off of it, and we talk about it after the fact. But it's changed since then. Gone, from just audio to video, now to a live post game show. So there's always room for improvement. We're always, we are still graciously thankful to the Alouettes organization for the access they do give us. Thankful to the members of the Alouettes organization who give us the time of day and treat us like anybody else would. We want to be treated like media, and that's how we hope that we are felt, that we are treated like. Things change over the years, and we're just we're just going to continue what we're doing, get better as we can every week, every year. And again, there's some stuff. I mean, it's 10 years. There's 10 seasons. Did it again. 10 seasons. And we're going to try to make this year memorable. We have a couple of ideas still that we have not been able to pull off over the last couple of years. But that's what we're shooting for. And it's hard to believe that it is 10 seasons, Cliff. It really is. We've gone through crappy teams, that shortened COVID season, not only for the league, no season for COVID, the shortened season the next year. We've stuck through it through and through. And
yeah, we've
again, if we didn't get along, we wouldn't have gone 10 years. I'll say it right away.
Absolutely. And we've, as you said, we've seen this team during the lowest of the lows and the highest of the highs.
That means a lot coming from you, Heather. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. We definitely appreciate those kind words for sure. I mean, we watched this team go 3-15. Yeah, that was oh no, sorry. I don't think the podcast said the 3-15 season. That was 2015, wasn't it? Or 2017.
Oh, they all blur. Yeah, I remember the good stuff.
Yeah.
VA being our day one guy. Losing a lot of guys to free agency. Losing Gino to free agency. By the way, congratulations to Gino Lewis. He's now even closer to home now that he's signed with the Ottawa Red Blacks.
Yeah. It's funny. I truly thought he was going to go to Calgary and be with VA, who they traded for him to be the QB1. So again,
Yeah.
props to our man VA for that as well.
And how many quarterbacks have we gone through in just over nine years?
Oh my word. We've gone through quarterbacks. We've gone through general managers. We've gone through owners, multiple owners, Tim. Can you believe that?
Head coaches.
Hey,
Yes.
I think, geez, I'm starting to think you and I might be the only consistent thing with this Alouettes organization at times. Even if we're not directly involved with the Alouettes organization, we might be the only thing that's consistent through and through. Through good times and bad, we have been here doing this podcast, talking Alouettes football. And, going through those low times and all the way up to winning a Grey Cup in 2023, being a part of that as well was, like, again, one of the many, many memories I take from this podcast. And I think that we're not even close to done. I feel like we truly only have scratched the surface. I know it sounds cliche to say that, but I really do think we've come a long way, but we still got a long way to go. We still got so many more stories to tell. We've got so many more people we need to talk to and have be a part of this podcast. I mean, this 10th broadcast season to me is just like, okay, you've come a long way, but you're just getting started in a lot of ways. One of our loyal listeners even said, like, you guys are really hitting your stride right now. You guys you found your groove, and it's great to hear that. And again, once again, definitely appreciate when you guys stop us and tell us how great we're doing, and it means a lot to us. But at the same time too, like, okay, yeah, we're getting there, but I still don't think we're there yet. And I think that's what motivates us and keeps us hungry and keeps us wanting to do this and keep wanting to make shows and create content and do things to help build this organization, not just the Alouettes themselves, but our organization here at the Alouettes Flightdeck. And to tell you the truth, Tim, I'm so excited that you still want to keep doing this. I still want to keep doing this. And I think you're with me in the sense that you want to see how far we can take this thing. And I'm just really excited for this season to get underway. I'm really excited for this broadcast season now finally underway. We got a bit of a new look to us, new presenting sponsor, which again, we're very appreciative of. And we're hoping that each and every one of you that's listening, whether it's on X, YouTube, Facebook Live, however you're consuming this podcast right here, right now, or if you end up listening to us a little bit later on through, wherever you get your podcasts from, that you'll stick around and you'll come with us for this ride, because there is nothing like this as far as I'm concerned. This is what gets me out of bed in the morning. This is what gets me excited, being able to come in here and talk Alouettes football with you, Tim, and with everybody here, like with all of Alouettes Nation, be able to reach everybody. It is a dream come true, but yet the dream is still going, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and thank God, I guess we can say thank God we have so many hours of audio available that I could have looked at, that this is not turning into a clip show. So
no, we don't need filler. At least I don't feel like we need filler yet. So
no, not at all. A reminder again to everybody that we will be we're on now every 2 weeks. You can still reach out to us over on all of our socials, whether it be on X, on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Leave us a comment. Make sure you subscribe and click that bell to see when we do go live over on YouTube, and just chime in. Let us know what you guys think. And again, we have a couple of things that we want to do. We have some current plans for road trips, more than just Ottawa in 2025. So stay tuned for that. Hoping that comes to fruition, but we'll see. We'll go from there. But just a little bit of a tease. Anybody who is interested in a 10th season commemorative logo shirt, those will be available. We're going to try to get them up on our main shop over at Alouettes on flightdeckgear.ca as soon as possible. Because again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I know you guys, some people have been asking for them, so we will make those available. But we can't wait to see each and every one of you as soon as possible, whether it be at the next show or coming up for training camp. But we really can't wait. 2025 is going to be a fun season, needless to say, win or lose for the Alouettes, but obviously winning is going to make it a lot more better.
It doesn't suck. And yeah, once again, folks, I said it before and I'll say it again. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, tell a coworker, tell everybody. If you don't like what we're doing, please tell us. Let us know how we can make this show better for you, because that's ultimately what, as corny as it sounds, we don't do this for us. We're just two guys talking football, but we want you to be a part of it as well. And we do this show for you. So if you're not happy with what we're doing, please let us know. But if you are happy, then please spread the word. Again, all of our socials are right there. You know where to find us. We're not that hard to find online. And just share the love, please, because we want everybody on board. We want the flight crew joining us on this latest voyage. So once again, make sure you hit that notification bell if you're on YouTube or Twix. Make sure you're following us. Make sure you're subscribed. However it is that you consume this podcast, make sure you're along for the ride, because I promise we're going to have a lot of fun this year.
Exactly. So for the first time in 2025, for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck podcast, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on final approach.